Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
But I'm not going to say anything, please.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
Patiently waiting on my dreams to come true, hoping and praying one day that they do. Oh, I don't know how, and I don't know when, just patiently waiting till then.
Prince Charles, the most eligible bachelor in the world, determined to marry by the age of 30 and to continue the noble and ancient lineage through his own heirs. Millions await the marriage of the decade. His choice, a shy, beautiful and extraordinary young aristocrat, Lady Diana Spencer, would have the nation completely beguiled and besotted. To the outside world, he had it all. The ultimate fairy tale romance, complete with blushing bride. But behind those smiling eyes, he longed for more. He was a sensitive young man who had never really found his place in the tribe. He felt neglected and lonely. So how could he really know what love is?
And I suppose in love. Whatever in love means.
I believe that kingship is a healing force in this sick world of ours. On one condition, that the sons or the grandsons of kings are freed from an enervating atmosphere of privilege and have an opportunity to discover, to test, and to develop those hereditary virtues which gave their ancestors the position of great importance.
But did the prince choose his bride for love, or for the nod of approval? This is the story of Charles, the Bachelor Prince.
Patiently waiting till then.
Hello, good morning. Well, the big day has arrived. In 4 hours' time, Charles Philip Arthur George Mountbatten Windsor marries Diana Frances Spencer, and Britain and the world will celebrate the wedding of the Prince and Princess of Wales. In this programme, we're going to capture every moment of the preparation, the procession, the service, and the celebrations. The celebrations began last night when 750,000 people jammed into Hyde Park for a spectacular firework display.
Prince Charles gazed reflectively from his palace room at the clear sky, reflecting on the long journey to this historic day. Today he was to marry the young but beguiling Lady Diana Spencer, 5 months after their engagement. Whatever love is, those rather telling words were spoken by the king-in-waiting as he revealed his bride-to-be to the world's media. But little did he know those words would come back to haunt him and would unknowingly be the harbinger of the sad end to their marriage. In the grey days of the 1960s, the moral landscape was somewhat different, and for a future king to marry anyone who was the least bit experienced with men was just not acceptable. The king-in-waiting was determined to fulfill his duty and find an appropriate bride. But the journey to find one took longer than one might think for the most eligible bachelor in the world.
In 2.5 hours' time, the procession sets off from Buckingham Palace, and the route is already packed with crowds to watch it go by. The person with probably the very best view of all is Alastair Stewart, who's 1,000 feet above London in the Goodyear airship Europa. So let's have the first of his reports. Alastair, are you receiving us?
Quite spectacular view here above the statue of Queen Victoria, and there are thousands of people already there staking their claim. It is, of course, from this point that in just 3 hours' time, the Queen and other members of the royal family will leave along that journey for St. Paul's Cathedral. Then at 10:30 exactly, it'll be Prince Charles, and 5 minutes later, Lady Diana Spencer, just a couple of 100 yards further along. The scenes down on the ground at the moment are really quite remarkable. There are a few sleeping bags, but mainly people are dressed up to the nines, ready for the big day.
Her Royal Highness is the proud and happy mother of a prince. The salute is fired, and in the monarch's home lies the infant boy who will one day be king. On Saturday, the eminent gynecologist Sir William Gilliatt was called to the palace for the most responsible case in even his career. By his advice, Sister H.M. Rowe was chosen midwife. The whole country knew that the baby would soon be born. All day on Sunday, people waited outside the palace, including phlegmatic pressmen with whom it is a point of honor to show no excitement. And all day there was no announcement. It was after 10 at night that those who waited, and they were very many, heard the tremendous news, a royal baby and a boy. Radio gave no advantage to watchers at the palace. The glad tidings went out everywhere.
This is the BBC Home Service. It has been announced officially from Buckingham Palace during the past hour that Her Royal Highness, the Princess Elizabeth, Duchess of Edinburgh, was safely delivered of a prince at 9:14 p.m. today, and that Her Royal Highness and her son are both doing well.
The press agencies were covering the world. The miracles of modern communication spanned the globe. Unto us a child is born, and no ordinary child, a prince. For the moment, all other news took second place. The morning newspapers went to press with one of those rare, warm stories that touch every heart.
The early years of marriage have set the seal on the happiness of the princess and her husband. The blessing of children has come not only to enrich their lives, but also to establish securely the line of succession. In Prince Charles, the public has acquired a new popular subject of interest, of whom some delightful pictures have been taken. We should like to see more of him, but the insatiable demand of the public has had to bow to the princess's very proper determination that her son shall not be spoilt by publicity.
From a young age, the prince was very well aware of his own destiny. The lives of his mother and father changed radically upon the death of King George IV. Princess Elizabeth ascended to the throne and became Queen Elizabeth II.
In the city that was so long an independent and powerful part of the realm, hers by right of succession, the Princess Elizabeth has agreed to accept the crown and rule as queen.
Prince Charles was the only one of their children to attend the coronation, as Princess Anne was considered too young at the time. Many people have fond memories of Charles sitting between the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret as he took on the role of heir apparent. His childhood is said to have been a solitary and lonely one, his mother and father busy with their duties, an endless round of royal engagements, official visits, and tours across the globe.
The royal couple proceeded up Broadway, the Canyon of Heroes, bombarded by tons of ticker tape, millions of cheers, in what was the most enthusiastic reception anywhere in Elizabeth's 10-day North American tour.
His relationship with the Queen, his mother, was said to be detached, and with his father, Prince Philip, it was particularly difficult. It is said that the young Charles often felt he disappointed his father, not quite living up to his father's strong personality. Prince Philip did, however, take a particular interest in teaching Charles the outdoor life, getting him to fish and hunt. A running theme throughout their relationship was the aim to get Charles to become more of a man, perhaps more of a leader, knowing the nation's future expectations for the monarch in waiting.
Focus on a famous prep school. Cheam is in the news on the first day of a new term, and young hopefuls arrive with their parents and relatives to carry on with that exhausting process called education. Accent on luggage, not forgetting tuck boxes and toys. Toys, well, super yachts and jet-propelled planes, one should say, perhaps. It's a wizard idea to bag your place in the classroom at once. Everybody here? Call over by Mr. Beck, joint headmaster of the school. Now there's one new boy still to arrive, and here he comes with his mother and father. The headmaster receives the royal party. no tuck box. Well, there's plenty of room in that trunk, no doubt. Prince Philip was a pupil here. His son looks happy to be following in father's footsteps.
Even in his education, Prince Philip was more determined than ever to toughen up young Charles. And he forced the Queen's hand, deciding to send Prince Charles to Gordonston. It was a tough and competitive school, but it was also extremely caring in Philip's day, and he believed strongly that it made him into the man he was, the man who had married the future Queen of England. So he believed it must make Charles a man who could be king, and perhaps a man who could attract a future queen. Prince Charles did have a close relationship with the Queen Mother, however, and she encouraged his gentle nature and kind ways, offering the affection that some may say have been slightly lacking in his relationship with his parents, a trait he would look for in his future bride.
And it's a glorious morning in the streets of London. The sun is already warm. There's hardly a breath of wind, and the feeling of controlled excitement and hushed expectancy goes beyond any bounds that I have ever known. Behind me is the Queen Victoria Memorial, known familiarly as the wedding cake, and it looks almost as though it's just been polished. And beyond it, Buckingham Palace, till now, of course, the home of the royal bridegroom, where in his apartment on the second floor, Prince Charles will be sticking to his usual morning timetable and taking breakfast, as always, at 8 o'clock. It's the road St James's Park, a few brave souls still trying to squeeze their way into the Mall, passing the still waters of the lake. The flowers are very busily, certainly turning their faces to the early sun, hundreds upon hundreds of scarlet geraniums making such a splash against the lush green grass. And the flags, they're everywhere. They're clustered on poles, they're held in sticky hands, and in fact they're draped round bodies. What a day it is. I had to crawl over bodies to get to my position. We're like sardines in a tin. But what does it matter as long as we can share this very special day with the royal couple?
The great court of Trinity College, Cambridge, and the royal procession arrives. The minis serve to underline Prince Charles' hope that his time at Cambridge will be uncluttered by deference to his royal status. Lord Butler, the master of Trinity, set a precedent by meeting him, but otherwise the college, founded by Henry VIII, welcomed him with the informality he obviously hoped for. The prince, who'll be 19 next month, will be reading archaeology and anthropology. The first Prince of Wales to attend the university for 100 years, he'll be living in a room in New Court, and it was here he met a friend of his, third-year student Robert Woods, son of the Dean of Windsor. A stroll to the backs for a look at the gently flowing Cam. In the Elizabethan dining hall, lunch 3 bob. There he saw windows dedicated to his great-great-grandfather and his grandfather, who were both up at Trinity.
The first time Charles would set his sights on a woman would be during his time at university. Charles broke a royal tradition, and instead of going straight into the armed forces after finishing school, he decided to pursue higher education straight away and accepted a place at Cambridge University. He quickly found his feet and particularly enjoyed performing on stage, a useful skill for a future king.
I'm letting out a little slack now. Yes, and taking up the strain. This is most exciting, ladies and gentlemen. I've never seen anything quite like it before. I think I got quite a large one here. It's very, very large indeed.
During his second year, Charles was sent to the University College of Wales, Aberystwyth, where he studied the Welsh language and history, ready to win the hearts and minds of Welsh nationalists at his official investiture as Prince of Wales.
During the 9 weeks, the Prince's home has been room number 95 in Pantycelyn Hall of Residence. In an identical room next door is third-year student Geraint Evans, who was given the job of looking after Prince Charles.
As to what sort of student he is, he's a very hard-working student, which perhaps is unusual in this place. He's also a very natural student, you know. This might sound strange, you wouldn't describe students natural, but you have to describe him as being natural. He's made a very hard effort to get on with people, and it's been very easy for all concerned, I think, this term.
Has it been possible for you to make a friend of him?
As far as it was ever possible, I think it made there's been certain friendship between us. Perhaps it'd be fair to call him an acquaintance. The only occasion where perhaps it could go further than this, he did about 4 weeks ago come home to tea with me, and you know, he's very natural and very easygoing then.
Mr. Evans, you're a committed nationalist and one of those who would not support the investiture, but has your opinion of Prince Charles been changed, been modified during his 9 weeks here?
To the ceremony, no, but to the person, yes. I certainly have considerable respect and considerable sympathy with him in this ceremony, but the rest of the paraphernalia, my attitude hasn't changed.
Carnarvon waits like a bride for her wedding, gaily dressed for the big moment, but anxious too that something could go wrong, though every precaution has been taken to make sure that it doesn't. As traffic jams block the town, army bomb disposal experts are on the alert. To prepare for the ceremony, 5 years local work has been crammed into 12 months. £5,000 worth of paint has been given away free, and all the shops in the town centre have been given a facelift. New paving stones have been laid, streets resurfaced, and new street lighting installed. Barriers are being placed along the route of the royal procession.
He had been conferred the title by letter patent in July 1958, but the official investiture was not held until July 1969. And after careful studying of the language, Charles gave his address in Welsh, much to the delight of all concerned. It was a time where he would grow in confidence and become a very hard-working and determined young man.
Every shop window proclaims the investiture, and every shopkeeper has been doing good business. Although there are 160 officially approved souvenirs, shoppers can choose among hundreds of other investiture trinkets. Carnarvon expects 250,000 people by Tuesday.
During his time at Cambridge University, Charles was introduced to his first love, Lucia Santa Cruz, daughter of the Chilean ambassador. Lucia was employed as a research assistant by the Master of Trinity College, and they met at a dinner party organised by Lord Butler. There was an instant attraction between the two of them. This was Charles's first real experience with a woman, but there was never a chance of Lucia becoming Charles's bride. At that time, as future head of the Church of England, the prince would have been forbidden to marry a Catholic. Lucia was also 5 years older than Charles and considered too experienced in the ways of the world. Once it was decided this relationship did not have a future, the matchmaking Lucia told Charles she had just the girl for him, and so it was that she went on to introduce him to Camilla Shand, later Camilla Parker Bowles, and now the Duchess of Cornwall, the great love of his life. The formidable Lord Louis Mountbatten, his great-uncle, more often seen as his honorary grandfather, advised Charles to sow his wild oats as a bachelor. However, he was also keen not to see history repeat itself. After the last Prince of Wales, King Edward VIII, abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson.
His was the first voluntary abdication in 1,000 years of British history. An abdication he explained to his far-flung empire in the most dramatic and heart-rending farewell ever broadcast.
But you believe me when I tell you that I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility without the help and support of the woman I love.
So Mountbatten advised Charles on specific characteristics and features which would make a good bride. In a case like yours, the man should sow his wild oats and have as many affairs as he can before settling down. But for a wife, he should choose a suitable, attractive, and sweet-charactered girl before she has met anyone else she might fall for. It is disturbing for women to have experiences if they have to remain on a pedestal after marriage. There has always been speculation as to the first exchange between Prince Charles and Camilla, but some suggest she introduced herself by saying, "My great-grandmother was the mistress of your great-grandfather, so how about it?" She was referring to her great-grandmother Alice Keppel, who was the long-term mistress of Charles's great-grandfather, King Edward VII. They were said to have met at a polo match. During his important formative years, Charles did not have an imposing physical presence, and his hand-eye coordination left something to be desired, so he was never picked for the traditional public school sports of rugby, cricket, and football. However, as he grew up, he discovered the world of polo and turned out to be something of a natural. Like much of his family, he had an affinity for horses and played very well, avoiding any ridicule from the press. No doubt Camilla would have been impressed with the handsome young prince, and there was an instant connection. With Camilla's on-off boyfriend, Andrew Parker Bowles, away for a while, they soon grew close and began to fall deeply for each other, although Camilla still longed for Parker Bowles. The powers that be decided that Camilla wasn't suitable as a potential wife, and she wasn't an aristocrat nor a virgin. It was decided to send Prince Charles on his first posting overseas as a newly qualified naval officer.
If later on I'm to be associated with all three services, it'd be a very good idea to do an attachment with each one. I think it gives one a very useful experience, very useful experience of responsibility and discipline. I think responsibility is the most important thing. It's the actual trust that's put in you to deal with other people, and the feeling that they can perhaps put their trust in you as well.
And whilst away in the service of his country, the news reached him that Camilla had become engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Andrew Parker Bowles. Prince Charles and Camilla stayed close friends, and when Camilla had her first child in 1974, Thomas, Prince Charles would become his godfather. At the time, it had been rumoured Charles's sister, Princess Anne, began a short-lived romance with Andrew Parker Bowles, a relationship both knew never had long-term prospects. Charles and Anne were born only 2 years apart, so as young children they relied on each other for company whilst their parents were away fulfilling their demanding royal schedules, and became very close, always mutually supportive through the trials and tribulations of their lives. They began their journey into fulfilling their own royal duties together, and became known as two of the most hard-working royals.
We've been looking forward to it enormously, because America, to me and to my sister, has always been a very fascinating and intriguing country, and we've always longed to come. And we're particularly grateful to you to let us stay in the White House. And little did we expect that the first and the only house we would stay in on our first visit would be the White House.
With so much in common and so many shared experiences, no doubt they would have confided in each other on their romantic endeavours. After all, they were in all the same social circles. Charles was well aware of the need to find a suitable bride, and in an interview at that time, he declared he was determined to find someone suitable and who would one day make a good queen. He gave himself a deadline, promising he would find his bride-to-be by his 30th birthday, a task that proved somewhat challenging.
When I joined Buckingham Palace way back in 1976, it was already rumoured that Prince of Wales would be marrying somebody like Princess Mary Astrid or Amanda Knatchbull. There were rumours that he would be marrying somebody else. There were always suitors around Prince Charles. He was the most eligible bachelor in the world at that time, heir to the throne of England. So he was never short of female companions. I saw him occasionally with the Queen. He'd stay at Buckingham Palace. His suite of rooms were at the palace. He had his own valet. He had his own household. and he was very independent. And really, he was searching for someone who could provide him with an heir and a spare. That was his main priority. He was getting old. And the Queen had said to him, "Isn't it about time you settled down, Charles? Isn't it about time you made us grandparents?"
You coming for lunch now then?
No, I'm not.
Don't buy your meal somewhere.
Another date? No, I'm buying my own lunch.
Are you?
Following his return from active service in the Royal Navy, Prince Charles met someone who appeared to be a very suitable aristocratic candidate, Lady Jane Wellesley, daughter of the 8th Duke of Wellington. They enjoyed a short-lived courtship, facing intense media scrutiny. However, when asked whether there may be an engagement announcement, Lady Jane replied, "Do you honestly believe I want to be Queen?" Charles's eyes turned to Davina Sheffield, beautiful granddaughter of the industrialist Lord McGowan, who was, on paper, another good choice, and she moved in all the right social circles. At the time, however, she was in a relationship with powerboat racer James Beard. She is said to have turned down a dinner date with the prince due to her relationship with Beard, but the persistent prince would not give up so easily, and Davina finally gave in and left her boyfriend. When the tabloids began to smell a story of romance for the prince, and even rumors of a possible engagement, they began to target James Beard, trying to find the dirt on Davina. The press finally revealed that Davina and James had been living in sin together, so she was thus deemed an unsuitable bride for Charles, and their relationship quickly ended. For Charles, each time he became close to someone, the press would find problems in their relationship. Greatly reminiscent of his time at Gordonston when he was just a young boy. Gordonston is founded on the idea of character building through tough physical pursuits as well as academic prowess. Each day started with an early morning run and cold showers, with open windows at night, even in the midst of winter. It was not the place for a sensitive young Charles, and he faced relentless bullying. But the isolated young prince found some solace through confiding in his bodyguard, Donald Green. After an incident in which the tabloid press caught Charles ordering a cherry brandy at the local pub, the unfortunate Royal Protection Officer was fired, which was a great loss for Charles. Thankfully, he found solace in creative pursuits, enjoying the art room and developing his pottery skills. He also found great pleasure in classical music, choosing to engross himself in cello lessons. But it's understandable why the prince would look for approval in each relationship, both to satisfy the tradition and reputation of his family and to satisfy the suspicions of the press, or he would face, once again, losing someone he began to care deeply about. In 1977, Prince Charles met Lady Sarah Spencer, sister of Lady Diana Spencer, at a Royal Ascot house party in Windsor. They dated for a while, but Sarah was too candid with the press, saying she wasn't interested in marrying the heir to the throne. "There is no chance of my marrying him. I'm not in love with him, and I wouldn't marry anyone I didn't love, whether he were the dustman or the King of England." Needless to say, this cut all chances of them marrying. Sabrina Guinness was Charles's next romantic interest. It was said Charles was absolutely besotted by her, even taking her to Balmoral to meet the family. Princess Margaret described the couple as serious, and it proved true, as they went to polo and theatre together. She even took to fly fishing, which was one of Charles's favourite hobbies. She was the generation's it girl, but after 9 months together, Charles broke up with her, as she was thought to have had too much of a romantic past. She went on to date several A-listers, such as Mick Jagger and David Bowie, but felt the label of Charles's ex followed her for many years to come. Lord Louis Mountbatten knew the importance of finding Charles a good match, someone who would tick all the boxes for a future queen. His granddaughter, Lady Amanda Knatchbull, was the perfect fit. Even the Queen was pleased with the pairing. He introduced them, and they did find a particular fondness for each other. However, Lord Louis Mountbatten was then killed by the IRA. Amanda, already feeling a great loss, was faced with the reality of the press, and after Charles proposed to her in 1980, she turned him down. The royal spotlight was just too much for her. She is often thought of as the one that got away. For Charles, too, this was quite a loss. Lord Mountbatten had been a great guide and mentor to him through the years. Another proposal was around the corner. Charles was aware time was passing by. He had missed his deadline of the age of 30, and he had yet to find a suitable wife. The pressure from not only the media, but his family would have been mounting on his shoulders, and for a prince determined to fulfill his duty, who was very sensitive to the expectations of those around him, it must have been a rather challenging time. He then started dating Anna Wallis, daughter of a wealthy Scottish landowner, Hamish Wallis. She was known in their circles as Whiplash Wallis for her fiery personality. Charles reportedly proposed to Anna twice, but was turned down both times. She dumped him after Charles took her to 2 balls, and then he went on to dance with Camilla, leaving her all on her own. "No one treats me like that, not even you," she said to him, swiftly ending any kind of relationship. The prince and Camilla had remained very close over the years, and although there was much speculation as to whether they had continued to see each other romantically over these few years, it was something they always denied. Camilla was in love with her husband, Andrew, and enjoyed married life, though not for much longer. At long last, it seemed like the prince's luck had changed. Charles had met Lady Diana Spencer through his ex-girlfriend, her sister Sarah, in 1977. Quite famously, Sarah takes credit for the introduction, saying, "I introduced them, I'm Cupid." At the time, he thought she was a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old. They met again a year after the death of Lord Mountbatten in 1980. Diana, now a couple of years older, was very sympathetic to Charles about his loss, which is said to have made him consider her as a possible wife. She seemed to have it all, the aristocratic background and no history with anyone else. Charles invited Diana to Balmoral, where the Queen, Prince Philip and the Queen Mother all received Diana very well. Even Camilla gave Prince Charles the nod of approval. She thought Diana was an ideal candidate. The courtship attracted a lot of attention from the press, the media chasing Diana wherever she went. Prince Philip warned Charles that if he did not decide to marry Diana soon, then the press would somehow ruin her reputation, which Charles interpreted as an ultimatum. The prince once spoke of marriage, saying, "It was the last decision on which I want my head to be ruled by my heart." And so he did what he believed was the right thing to do.
She now faced possibly the most daunting initiation test for would-be members of the royal family, ordeal by the media. Her flat came under siege. She was followed wherever she went. Even under this pressure, she stayed calm, and in doing so, she won respect. How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us now.
Well, it is, naturally.
And you coping with it all right, though? You seem to be doing very well.
Well, I'm still around.
Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
But I'm not going to say anything, afraid.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long. In February 1981, the waiting was over. Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Charles and Lady Diana were engaged. The ring was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. The couple looked happy and relaxed, delighted, like everyone else, that a wedding would take place. Earl Spencer and Lady Diana's stepmother celebrated among the crowds outside the palace gates. Inside, Lady Diana was facing up to a future she could hardly have dreamt of.
Yesterday you were a nanny looking after children. Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run-up to it all in the last 6 months. And Next to Prince Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
The months between the engagement and the wedding were hectic, often exhilarating, sometimes trying.
Oh, Cameron!
She had to learn the restrictions of royal life. Never again would she be able to walk quietly down to the shops. Prince Charles had to keep the engagements he'd accepted before the announcement of the engagement, and this meant some separation. Diana had to accept this and do her best to hide her feelings.
Now, if you watch that piece of footage when Prince Charles is asked, "Are you in love, sir?" Princess Diana's beaming, and she's giggling, saying, "Yes, yes, yes." And he says, "Whatever love is." And she looks at him as if to say, "What are you talking about? Don't you know what love is?" That was the problem from the beginning. Charles didn't really know what love was.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Yes.
Well, it obviously put your own interpretation.
Obviously means two very happy people.
Yes.
Once again, congratulations.
Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's very kind.
The weeks before the wedding were happy ones. The couple attended many events as wedding fever gripped the nation. The more she attended, the better she coped.
In July that year, the prince gazed reflectively from his room, thinking about the long journey to this historic day. He had found the blushing bride and would soon enter a marriage that would have the whole world besotted.
A quick look all along the route, see what it looks like as more and more people, as you've been telling us, are out and about. The best places are filling up, and everyone's making sure it's going to be a great day. Buckingham Palace, which has seen so many royal brides since the young Queen Victoria was its first, marrying Prince Albert 141 years ago. The royal carriages, the Queen's procession and Prince Charles's little procession will drive down the leafy Mall to Admiralty Arch in the distance. And 5 minutes after the Prince of Wales has passed, Lady Diana and her father will come out from Clarence House in the glass coach, just with police outriders, for she's not royal yet, and will follow her husband-to-be to St. Paul's. Once through Admiralty Arch into Trafalgar Square. And next the carriages will bowl past St. Clement Danes, the Air Force Church, and Gladstone's statue. And though Temple Bar is the border between the city of Westminster and the city of London, the Queen won't stop for any ceremony there today. She'll just drive straight on into Fleet Street, which has done its best, though not perhaps a spectacular best with the bunting. It'll be keeping its most colourful words for tomorrow morning's papers. All the troops along the way from here will be from regiments of which Prince Charles is Colonel-in-Chief. The Cheshire Regiment, the Gordon Highlanders, the Parachute Regiment. All will be here in half companies. And from the Commonwealth too, from Canada, the Winnipeg Rifles and the Royal Regiment of Canada. From Australia, the Royal Australian Armoured Corps. They'll be lining the route all the way to St. Paul's, to the steps and the west doorway of St. Paul's and the red carpet. Just a little while to go before this St. Paul's meets its first royal bride, Lady Diana. And the great door is not yet open.
They made their way to St. Paul's Cathedral with a congregation of 3,500 people and 2 million people lining Diana's route from Clarence House. It was a day full of anticipation and excitement. Accompanied by her father, John Spencer, Diana travelled to St. Paul's Cathedral in the glass carriage. With father on her arm, she then walked the 3.5 minutes up the aisle.
She was still Lady Di, but only just. She was about to become the first English girl in 500 years to marry a Prince of Wales. The eyes of the world were on her, and she knew it.
It is said that each step she took down the aisle, she was looking for Camilla. her eyes darting back and forth until she spotted her. Perhaps at that time she thought once she married Charles, she would have his undivided attention. And perhaps she did, for a while.
She seemed remarkably free from nerves, at the age of 20, beginning a new and very different life. He said, "You look wonderful." She said, "Wonderful for you." The service was followed by the crowd outside in the sunshine.
I require and charge you both, as you will answer at the dreadful day of judgment when the secrets of all hearts shall be disclosed, that if either of you know any impediment why ye may not be lawfully joined together in matrimony, ye do now confess it.
It went without a hitch, almost.
I, Diana Francis,
I, Diana Francis,
take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George,
take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George,
to my wedded husband,
to my wedded husband,
to have and to hold,
to have and to hold,
from this day forward,
this day forward,
according to God's holy law,
according to God's holy law,
and thereto I give thee my troth.
and thereto I give thee my troth.
She was no longer a children's helper. She was the Princess of Wales, married to the heir to the throne. Another chapter in the 1,000-year history of the British royal family had been written.
But the princess was brimming with hope and love for the future. She fell in love with her prince. And there they were, a golden couple.
There they were, a whole future ahead of them, ready to start a life together. Yet to know of the trouble that was soon to come, and the yearning they would both feel for a greater, more authentic love. For Prince Charles, he would find it hard to let go of the affection he felt for Camilla. Of course, the world knows what happens next, but perhaps Charles learned he cannot sacrifice love to comply with outdated rules and tradition, hauntingly reminiscent of King Edward VIII, who was forced to abdicate the throne to be with the woman he loved. For Prince Charles, that would be when he would find his own inner peace and discover a life with the woman he loved all along. No approval needed.
Oh, every night, pretend I'm fine. Oh, but deep down I know that when I wake, you're far away, and I am still all alone. Oh, I am still all alone. Yeah, I am still all alone.